So Archana, you were talking about this inner life that we have. Is that like introspection? In other words, do you think introverts have more of an inner life, or would you say no, not at all? We all have these inner lives, but they just manifest differently between, say, introverts, extroverts, but we all have the inner life.
I think that's such a great question, right? Because we tend to think that maybe people who are quieter may have a more active inner life, while
Right.
someone who's more of an extrovert, they're just out there all the time. What kind of inner life are they going to have? And the thing is, the inner life, the mental model, we all carry them,
Mhm.
right? These are all stories that we're telling ourselves, stories that we may be trying to prove, or stories that we're trying to run away from, right? Think about uh, what you learned from your family.
Mhm.
Think about what you learned first year of business school,
Sure.
right? Think about what you learned from your first boss. And suddenly you have made assumptions about what is power, what is trust, how to value things. So whether you are, wherever you fall in that personality test of that MBTI that we were talking about earlier, um, your inner life is going to be just as rich as anyone else's. What an inner life is not is a branding exercise.
Hmm.
Sometimes you'll have CEOs who need a makeover, and that is not an inner life. You may sometimes have folks who may go to executive education programs to develop their what we call, their horizontal skills, how to become better at finance, or a better communicator. So their list of competencies, that's not your inner life, right? The inner life shows up when the silence you leave unaddressed in a room is picked up by others.
Mhm.
The inner life shows up when you think something is important, when all it is urgent,
Hmm. Got it.
right? The inner life shows up when, even when nobody is asking you to, you're still trying to prove yourself. So that pattern that you're hearing over there is that our inner lives, even though we use the phrase inner lives, it doesn't stay hidden. It leaks. It leaks into our tone, into our timing, into our team dynamics, into our presence as a person, as a human.
That's
And
great. I've never heard it said that way. That's a wonderful way to think about it. That your inner life, even though you may think it's your inner life, it's actually going to be, as you said, leaking out into your social life, your personal life, your work life. It is coming out of you. It's not something that you can just shut the door on
yeah,
it. And
yeah,
you might think you can, but you are a reflection, perhaps, of part of your inner life. If
yeah. And I think that reflection is so important, because many times we are not, we're not an island, right? We're always working with someone else. We're always in a family. And so our behavior is going to get impacted by this inner life. It's like when someone says all of the right words, right? You have a CEO or a team leader, and they're saying all the right things, but people around them are still kind of hesitant. They still kind of feel uncertain about what's going to happen. I'm not saying it's everything to do with this leader or the CEO, but there is something about how our inner life impacts the interactions that we have. It's why suddenly a rising star can plateau, right? Like someone who's doing really well at work, not because they've stopped performing,
yes,
but because something that they have internalized in their childhood has not been able to carry them forward. And so they may now be the leader of a team, but maybe they learned something in their childhood about how, as the leader of a team, they should never tell someone how to come to work, or they shouldn't be the one taking, sort of taking the team on this journey together. They always need to be the foot soldier. They always need to be the follower. Now suddenly they're in this position where there's this pressure on them. And now they're at this point where they have to perform, but their performance is impacting everyone on their team because they're carrying the story with them.
What you're saying makes me realize that there's this, I believe it's a Buddhist philosophy, but what you're saying is the reason why it's in that philosophy is important. And that philosophy is something like, when you are alone and with your own thoughts, you should be very careful about your thoughts. You should think in a positive way when you're alone. You should be careful of the thoughts you're having. And what you're saying is the reason why is because those inner thoughts are going to be part of you, and they're going to come out of you and be a reflection of you. So you have to be careful with your thoughts. You should never really harbor negative thoughts or construct negative thoughts. You should try hard not to do that, because it will be part of you. I kind of like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, whatever we think, it's a bit like we are what we eat in some
Yes.
ways. I guess we are what we think. Yeah.